Hi there. Welcome to another edition of Nature's News. This is our second edition. My name is Carrie Schved. I'm the educator at White Memorial Conservation Center, and I am joined today by Navar, a red-tailed hawk. He's one of our education animals. I'm just taking him for a walk right now. What I'm going to do with Nature's News is give you a sampling of some of the natural events that are occurring right now all around us. So for instance, with red-tailed hawks, they have nestlings. So they laid their eggs back in the end of February, beginning of March. The eggs have hatched. There are now usually 1 to 5 nestlings, and the parents are feeding them, bringing food to the nest for them. They'll probably stay with their parents, either in the nest or around the nest site until about June. And June is when they're going to fledge. So they're going to take flight, and eventually they will go off on their own. Navar is a male red-tailed hawk, so he's a little bit on the smaller side for a red-tailed hawk. The females get bigger than the males. And as you can see, he does have a broken wing. He was a bird that was injured in the wild and is no longer able to fly. So that's why we keep him here at White Memorial. And we try to give him some enrichment, like taking him for walks or using him for education programs. So join me as we discover some more of the natural phenomena that's occurring all around you, right before your eyes, here in late April and early May. I've been waiting for these to blossom. I consider these flowers another quintessential sign of spring. These are called common blue violets. They have several other common names as well, like meadow violet. They have these beautiful bluish, purplish flowers with 5 petals, 2 on the top, 1, 2, and then 3 down below. And then their leaves are actually shaped like beautiful hearts. And I love finding things in nature that look like hearts. So look for these flowers blooming practically anywhere where there's enough moisture and sunshine. You can easily find these in your own yards. They tend to bend down just a little bit, but if you lift them up, you'll see the beautiful radiating lines on that bottom petal that lead right to the center of the flower. And those lines are basically like guidelines for insects, leading them straight to the center where they can find nectar and pollen inside these flowers. And I want to draw your attention to 2 types of plants that you'll often find growing right next to each other in a wetland, but they are 2 very, very different species. The one that we are probably the most familiar with is this plant called skunk cabbage. And of course it is called skunk cabbage because it does have a very foul odor that's released when you break any part of this plant, when you step on the leaves or the spathe or the flower. All of the plant parts release a yucky odor. And they've got these big roundish leaves. They can get much, much bigger. The leaves are just starting to emerge now. This is a strange plant in that the flower comes out first. The skunk cabbage was actually flowering way back in maybe even late February, definitely into March. And the flower, I wouldn't say it's the prettiest flower. In fact, the spathe around it has even evolved to look like rotting carrion. See the colors on the spathe? Now the actual flower, or the cluster of flowers, is down here. You see that? That is the flower of skunk cabbage, and it's covered by this spathe. Actually, this is a type of plant that generates its own heat as it's flowering, and the spathe helps keep it warm as well. Now, after the flower comes out with the spathe covering it, then about this time of year is when the leaves start to emerge. Okay, so that is skunk cabbage. And we've probably all seen that around wetland areas before. The one that grows next to it that maybe isn't as well known or is maybe often misidentified as skunk cabbage, this plant right here is called false hellebore. False hellebore. Now false hellebore grows its leaves before it flowers. So there are no flowers here as the leaves have just started emerging within the last week or 2. But if you take a close look at one of the leaves, you notice that ribbed pattern, and the leaves are a little bit more elongated than the leaves of the skunk cabbage. And so this is a completely different plant. This is actually a plant in the lily family, so not really related to skunk cabbage in any way, but they do like growing in the same habitat. How many of you have seen one of these beauties so far this year? This is a common garter snake, the most common type of snake that we have in Connecticut. And they are also usually the earliest reptile to emerge from hibernation. So by this point, most garter snakes have all come out of their hibernacula, their winter hideaways. And at this point, they are either trying to find a mate. The males will pursue females as soon as they come out of hibernation. Or if they've already done that, then they are looking for their first meal. And typically, the main food of garter snakes is earthworms, but they also will eat frogs and toads, even fish. They can really be found in almost any habitat you can think of in the state, whether it's a field, a forest, a pond, of course, even your garden, which is why some people call them garden snakes, but technically it's garter snake, G-A-R-T-E-R. And they're not venomous, but we have fairly recently discovered, they do have a little bit of a mild toxin in their saliva that they do use to subdue their prey. So just like any wild animal, you don't necessarily want to pick up a wild garter snake because you do have the potential to get bit. Here I am at one of the ponds that we have here on White Memorial property. And of course, what do you see fairly regularly around ponds? Well, Canada geese. Here's 4 adult Canada geese. Right now is the time when Canada geese are either incubating their eggs, or the first week of May is the peak time when those eggs are hatching and little goslings are being born. So these 4 Canada geese obviously aren't on any nests at the moment, but usually Canada geese will make their nests along the edge of ponds. And the female will sit on the eggs while the male stands guard. He's never very far away. And please don't approach nesting Canada geese, because that male is definitely there to defend his family. Geese do live in mated pairs. They do mate for life. We might even have 2 mated pairs right here. And if you look very closely on the legs of a couple of these geese, I think the one on the left here actually has a band. So this goose has been banded by a waterfowl scientist at some point so that we can help track Canada geese populations. And I believe one of the geese in this pair also, both of the geese in this pair have waterfowl bands. And each one of these bands has a number, an assigned number, that if you get close enough with binoculars, you can read the number and actually look up where this goose was probably born and maybe where it has spent its life. 2 of my all-time favorite mammals that live in Northwest Connecticut are the bobcat and the red fox. And right now, the bobcats, the female bobcats, are in their peak season of having kittens. So bobcats can actually give birth throughout most of the year, except the dead of winter. But right now is really the peak when most of them are having their litters, usually about 3 to 4 kittens per litter. This was a picture that was actually taken right here on White Memorial property at the top of Apple Hill. And then red foxes have already had their kits, and their kits are now old enough that they're starting to come out of their dens, and they're playing with each other right outside the den entrances. So what a lucky sight if you happen to see baby foxes, little fox kits, playing around with each other. And if you do see that, you're probably not far from the den where they were actually born just a few weeks before. The nature activity that I recommend for this week is going out with your families and taking a look under some logs to see what you can find. It's like the ultimate treasure hunt to see what animals are living underneath logs. So I'm just going to take this one and roll it over, see if there's anybody living here, and look who I found. A red-backed salamander. Probably the most common type of salamander that you will find living under logs in our local forests. Here's another salamander that's also under the same exact log. We got really lucky today. So we're going to just briefly move him out of the way too so that we don't hurt him when we roll the log back over. Oh, and he's cold. It's a cold day today, so he's not very active. So when we go to roll the log back over, we're gonna put the salamanders right on the edge, then we roll that log back, and those salamanders will make their way back under the log on their own. They will definitely go back where it's nice and safe. So that was a cool log. Let's try another one. See if we can find anything else living underneath logs. We want to be very careful. We don't really want to disrupt the habitat any more than we have to. So if we look under a log and we don't see anything, make sure to put that log right back where it was so that we're not disturbing the habitat of anything that may have just been right underneath the leaf litter that we didn't see. Okay, leave the forest just as you found it. So I always make sure to turn the logs back over. Let's try this one. Oh, another salamander. We're in a hot spot for salamanders. Look at that guy right there. Another red-backed salamander. All right. Oh, and we have a beetle right here too. Again, you just never know what you're going to find under logs, and that's what makes the activity so fun. Well, that's a wrap for our second edition of Nature's News. I hope you enjoyed learning about some of the things that are happening all around you in nature. I'm sure you're seeing a lot of amazing occurrences in your yards as well. So if you have any pictures or videos that you want to share with us, feel free to email info@whitememorialcc.org or post on Facebook and direct it to the page called the White Memorial Conservation Center. We would love to see what phenomena you are seeing as well. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.